safer position right now. Okay? Marami pa rin COVID cases, but ayun, just be safe na lang muna. Okay? Palakasan tayo ng kapit sa Diyos. Dasal-dasal na lang talaga nangyayari sa Pilipinas. Okay? So yun lang, just be safe. Okay? And do not be too confident. Okay? Kasi even though you have the vaccine, there will be a chance for you to get the uh, there will be a chance for you to get the virus. Okay? Pero at least lesser yung extent niya. Hindi ka na kailangan ma-hospital. Yun naman yung goal ng vaccine eh. Kung magkasakit ka man, at least di ka mamamatay. Okay? So, yun yung goal niya. Okay? So, again, if you have the opportunity to be vaccinated, go and be vaccinated. Okay? Reach out your local LGUs for that. Okay? So, with that, we can start on the first part of chapter 4, which is on chemical reaction. Again, medyo mahaba to. Okay, and this will require 2 weeks discussion. So, yan, just be reminded na lang, okay? So, ayan, for this chapter, we're going to talk about chemical reactions, which I know you have learned in your high school, okay? So, alam nyo yan. Pero, later on, we will add more information to this topic, okay? Kasi yung natutunan nyo nung high school, that is not enough in college, okay? So later on, I will give you much more detailed types of chemical reaction, but of course, the complexity will go higher. So that's why we really have to pay attention later on, okay? So with that, the objective of this chapter is for you to be able to distinguish different types of chemical reactions and for you to know how to balance redox reaction. Okay? So our goal for today is just this one. And then for the next meeting, ito yung gagawin natin. Okay? So ito yung September 25, ay sorry, 22. And this will be the September 29. Okay? So yan. So, just a short review. We knew in the previous chapters that matter can undergo changes, and that changes, no, it could be a physical change or a chemical change, no. When you say physical change, what's just changing is yung kanyang physical properties, physical appearance, okay? So, ano ba yung itsura ng matter natin? Kunwari, tubig yan, lagay mo sa ref. Giging solid yan, okay? So, the composition is still the same. However, its appearance isn't the same, okay? So, if ganun lang yung difference, yung itsura lang yung nagbago, we call that physical changes, okay? And then, obviously, we have the next one, the chemical change, okay? So, in chemical change, what we have here is yung ating matter, nagpapalit anyo talaga, okay? So, kung dati carbon lang siya, ngayon, carbon dioxide na siya, okay? So, kunwari, ganun. Okay? Ayan, so, kunwari, we have this reaction here, no? So carbon, you react it with oxygen, maging carbon dioxide yan. Okay, so this is an example of a chemical change now. Because before, your reactant is just carbon. Then after the reaction, CO2 na siya. Okay? So we know that in the law of definite proportion, which we discussed last time, okay, sabi doon, for each molecule, there is a distinct ratio of number of atoms. Okay? And by changing the ratio of number of atoms, ayun, ibig sabihin, it means na ibang compound yan. Okay? Magkaiba sila, hindi sila same. Okay? So, as you can see, it is clearly evident in the chemical formula. Ito, carbon lang. Ito, CO2 siya. Okay? So, although dalawang atoms lang pinagkaiba, ang idea dito is that magkaiba pa rin talaga sila. Okay? And that is chemical change. No? The identity of our matter changes before and after the reaction. Nagbabago siya. Okay? So, yun. So, yun lang kailangan nyo alalahanan. And usually, our chemical changes are often referred to as chemical reactions. Okay, and chemical reactions are accompanied by chemical equation. The balancing of chemical equation will be done in your laboratory. Okay? So if you have your lab class na nag-start na dito, that's good. And I hope that you are able to balance the equations na. Okay? Otherwise, you really have to learn that muna. Okay? Kung later this day yung inyong lab. Okay? So, basta yan. Okay? So, chemical reactions are often accompanied by chemical equations which we know should be balanced. Okay? Due to the law of conservation of mass. Okay? So, our objectives for today naman, it doesn't require us to balance equation. Instead, it requires us to recognize some types of chemical reaction. Okay? So, ganun lang. Hindi tayo magbabalance today. Rather, we are just going to recognize some distinct patterns in chemical reactions. Okay? So, in your high school, you are familiar with these four types of chemical reaction. Okay? So, you are familiar with this. Okay? Pero, later on, we will give you much more complicated types of chemical reactions. Okay? So, hindi naman siya super complicated, but it is very important for you to know them na because in your analytical chemistry, you will use them a lot. Okay? So, ito yung high school type of chemical reaction, and then later on, we'll proceed with the college type of chemical reaction. Okay? So, sige. So, in high school, we have four general chemical reactions, okay, based on the way our molecules react. No? So, we have the synthesis, decomposition, single displacement, and double displacement. Okay? So, sabi sa high school, if synthesis yan, you have two or more reactants. And then on the product side, you have just one. Okay? So basically, what just happened is that all the atoms of different molecule just combined to form an entirely new molecule. Okay? So here are some examples. So we have sulfur and oxygen. Okay? The bonding is covalent here. Okay? Kasi para silang non-metal. So they form covalent bonds to form sulfur dioxide, which is a binary compound, okay? Or covalent compound, okay? In the case of magnesium naman, so when we have magnesium metal, no, it can be oxidized in the air to produce magnesium oxide, no? So in chemistry lab, no, kapag may solid na metal ka, over time makikita mo mamumuti siya, no? The reason for that is it reacts with oxygen in the air, okay? So yan. So yung magnesium metal natin, that is a shiny silver looking like metal, but when you just place it in open air, it becomes oxidized na, naging ionic compound siya. Okay? So yan. So yun ang synthesis, no? You have multiple reactants but one product. Okay. So madali lang, 'di ba, nung high school. Okay. So the next type of high school chemical reaction is decomposition. Ano meron sa decomposition? You just have one reactant but you have multiple products. Okay? So that is the complete contrast of the synthesis. The synthesis, you have multiple reactants, one product. In decomposition, you just have one reactant, multiple products. Okay? So, when do decomposition reactions occur? Okay. Usually, decomposition reaction occur when you heat your molecules or you apply electricity to it. Okay? So, in this first equation here, in the first equation here, ang tubig, if you apply electricity to it, it can undergo electrolysis, na water electrolysis. Okay? So, I'm not sure if nagawa nyo na to dati somewhere in your life. Pero ako dati, nung bata pa ako, kung ano nung ginagawa ko sa mga bagay sa bahay, no? So, yan. Kaya siguro ako napunta sa science. Okay? Kasi, one of the important traits in scientific community is to be curious about everything, di ba? So, nung bata pa ako, no, even high school ata, nun, ginagawa ko, mga battery, nilalagay ko sa tubig. Kasi bumubula siya. Okay? So, nung bata ko, di ko gets bakit siya bumubula na. But the answer to that no pala is that the water is being decomposed no into hydrogen gas and oxygen gas. Okay? So you may try this at home. Okay? So you get your water, lagyan mo onting asin so that it will be conductive. And then yung battery nyo, maglagay kayo ng dalawang wire doon sa tubig na may asin. Bubula yun. Okay? Bubula siya. Okay? So that's the decomposition of water into hydrogen gas and oxygen gas. And this is actually used by our astronauts in the outer space. No? Okay? Di ba yung urine nila, the urine can be repurposed as water. Okay? Sometimes if they have too much water, they convert that into fuel and oxygen gas. Yung fuel, ginagamit to in their engines. Oxygen gas, this is what they breathe. Okay? And this is what they breathe in. Okay, so ganun lang. So again, this decomposition reaction by applying electricity. For this one naman, you apply heat. Okay? So, our oxyanions, when heated, they decompose kasi talaga. Okay? So, this is an oxyanion, chlorate. If you apply heat to it, it will become unstable. So, it will degrade into oxygen gas. Okay? So, yun lang. And then another high school type of chemical equation is the single displacement. Okay, so in the single displacement, what happens here is that you have your anion. Okay, in our case here, the anion is nitrate. It just switches the cation. Okay, so kanina ang cation niya ay silver. Ngayon, ang cation na niya ay zinc. Okay. So yan, it is the anion that switches cations. No? Okay? So yan. Siguro hindi na siya masaya. So yan, for example, HCl. So si Cl, partner niya si hydronium ion, but after the reaction, its partner now is magnesium. Okay? So yan. By the way, yung balancing, hindi natin siya gagawin ngayon ha. So, ibig sabihin, most of the equations later will be unbalanced. Okay. Anyway, so yun lang. There's a reason for this, no? Yung single displacement reaction. May dahilan bakit naging ganito to. Okay. And that will be discussed next week and then in your analytical chem then. Okay. And then, of course, we have the last one. The double displacement method wherein your cation and your anion completely switches their partners. Okay. For example, the sulfide, its original partner is sodium, but now it is hydrogen. They form hydrogen sulfide. Cl does the same as well. So, each yung hydronium yung kasama niya before, but now it is sodium. Okay? So, very high school, di ba? So, siguro isip niyo, dali-dali naman. Okay, madali kasi talaga. Okay. Basically, you just have to recognize patterns so that you can tell what general type of chemical reaction it is. Okay? So, apat lang yan. Again, we have the synthesis, decomposition, single displacement, and double displacement. Okay? However, let's go to the college version. Okay, so in college version, we categorize the types of chemical reaction with much more complexity. Okay, kasi yung ating chemical reaction hindi lang yung ganyan-ganyan eh. Okay, so may specific types pa siya. Okay. So, yan. So, sabi dito, so we have more specific types of chemical reaction. We have the combustion and the reactions in aqueous solution, in which kasama doon yung precipitation, acid-base, and redox. Okay? So, for our goal today, cover natin to. And itong isa, mahaba yan. So, next meeting na lang yan. Okay? So, yan. So, if you are familiar with this one, especially if kayo ay galing sa STEM backgrounds, then that's an advantage for you. However, if you did not come from a STEM background, medyo mahihirapan kayo dito. But I hope that by the end of the discussion, makakasabay na. Okay? Sa una, intimidating lang siya. Pero, madali lang talaga siya. No? Okay, so I will do my best later to give you the idea, no, kung paano mo malalaman yung mga reactions na yan. Okay? So, ayan. So, let's begin with the combustion reaction. So, we know already that combustion reaction is the reaction between your organic molecules with oxygen in the air to produce water vapor and carbon dioxide. Okay? So, ganun talaga. Yan yung format niya. Okay? So, kapag yung papel, sinunog mo, okay, your paper is an organic molecule, okay, pag yun, sinunog mo, it reacts with oxygen in the air, okay, and they produce CO2 and H2O, okay. So, yun. So, that's why in combustions, no, kailangan ng oxygen parate, okay. Kaya sabi nga ng bumbero, no, kapag may apoy, anong gagawin? Isara mo yung mga pwede isara, no? Siyempre, lumabas ka muna ng ng place ng sunog. Then, make sure na walang tao sa loob. Then, isara mo. Kasi pag sinara mo, yung oxygen, ayun, ma-onti siya. Okay? So, yan. Kapag pag onti oxygen, hindi na masusunog yung bagay. Okay? Or yun dun yung concept na ginagamit sa fire extinguisher. Okay, so fire extinguisher is just carbon dioxide. Okay, 'di ba? Ako nakagamit na ng fire extinguisher kasi nung college kami sa chem lab nagkasunog. Ewan ko, napaka-careless ng kasama namin sa klase. Ayun, natabig yung alcohol. Hindi kumalat yung apoy. Grabe, nakakatawa talaga yung eksena na to. Pero, yun, kailangan alam niya yung ano, kailangan alam mo yung paano gumamit ng fire extinguisher. So, yun, yung classmate ko, very careless. Nangyari, yung alcohol na tabig, no? PUP yun, puro kahoy yung, mga gamit dun. So, nagliliyab. Ginawa namin, hindi may fire extinguisher, then, dapat alam niyo gumamit ng fire extinguisher, ha? So, aim, pull mo yung lock and then squeeze, di ba? Okay. Ayan, pagka squeeze mo, lalabas kulay puti, no? What's that white thing, no? So that's a mixture of carbon dioxide and other fire retardants, no? When I say fire retardant, nagpapahinto ng apoy. Okay, so ang purpose ng carbon dioxide in the in the fire extinguisher is that it doesn't allow your burning molecules to have access to oxygen. Okay? Kasi kapag may access siya sa oxygen, ayun, magliliyab yan. However, when you use fire extinguisher, yung carbon dioxide doon, mangyayari, it drives off the oxygen. Kapag wala tayong oxygen, it becomes the limiting reagent. Hihinto yung reaction. Okay? So, ganun. Okay? So, by now, you should have an idea on how fire extinguishers work na. Okay? And yun, inside it is just compressed gas together with other fire retardants. No? Yung compressed gas na yun is just the carbon dioxide. Okay? So that, pag iname mo siya sa apoy, it will not react anymore with the oxygen in the air. Okay? So, pag carbon dioxide na yung hangin sa paligid ng apoy, hihinto na yung reaction. Okay? And that's also the reason why sinasabi ng ating mga firefighters to use blankets na basa. I-ganon mo sa fire. Ayun, basta i-ganon mo sa fire. Okay, 'di ba? Anong purpose nun? The blanket, yung wet blanket, it actually prevents the fire to come in contact with oxygen. Okay? So, yun. So, yun lang. Okay? So, yun yung ating combustion reaction. And as you can see, fixed na yung ibang molecules dito. Fixed na ito, pati ayan. Okay? So, basta makakita ka ng ganyan, combustion yan. Okay? Ang nagbabago lang is this one. Okay? So, this one is your organic molecule, and then yung subscripts XYZ, they can change, no? So, pwedeng may oxygen, pwedeng wala. Doesn't matter. As long as it follows that formula, then probably it might undergo combustion reaction. Okay? So, in humans, no? Especially kayo, kung kumakain kayo right now, okay? The food you're eating right now is being broken down into glucose, no? And after some time in your body, yung inyong glucose na yan, it will be converted to carbon dioxide and water vapor, water molecules. Okay, so it will be converted into water molecules. Okay, so siguro ang giisip kayo, no, sir, di ba combustion yan? Dapat nag-aapoy ako. Okay. So, sa body kasi natin, this type of combustion, no, it requires a different mechanism. Obviously, hindi tayo pwede masunog, no? Hindi tayo pwede maging ganong kahat. Okay, kasi pag nasunog ka, di patay ka, no? So, ang mangyayari is that our body adopts a different mechanism, okay, in order to combust our food into the final products, carbon dioxide which we exhale and the water which is being expelled, no, kapag tayo ay umiihi din, no? Okay, so instead of us burning literally the sugars we eat, we do metabolic processes na. So doon na pumapasok yung Krebs cycle, glycolysis, Krebs cycle, electron transport chain. Okay, so kaysa naman magliyab tayo, 'di ba? So ganun. We have those three metabolic processes, no, that uses a different mechanism in order to combust our food into carbon dioxide and water, and instead na fire yung energy, ATP ang energy form natin. Okay, so yan. So alongside this reaction, ATP is produced, no, and that is used in order to provide energy to other biological processes in the body. Okay, so again, keep in mind for combustion reaction, some molecules are fixed already, such as the oxygen, carbon dioxide, and water. Ang nagbabago na lang is your CHO. Okay, so we call this the fuel. Okay, so yan, pwedeng fuel tawag dyan. Okay, or organic molecule. Okay, so ito ang babago lang yan ng subscripts and balance mo na lang siya. Okay, so ayun. Sometimes the reaction is incomplete for combustion processes. That's why we form soot and carbon monoxide. Okay, so you might be thinking, ano yung soot? Okay, so alam nyo to. Wait lang. Di ba pag nagluluto kayo, may times na yung ilalim ng lutuan, yung ilalim ng cookware nyo, nangingitim. Bakit? Yung itim na yon, that is called soot. Okay? Ayan o, tignan nyo. Galit na galit yung apoy. Dagat-dagatan apoy. Anyway, so ito yung lutuan natin. Di ba, pag nagluluto tayo madalas, yung ilalim ng lutuan, nangingitim. Di ba? Okay? So the reason for that is the combustion is not complete. Okay? Ano meaning ng incomplete combustion? When I say incomplete combustion, the oxygen, no, is not enough, no, to fully oxidize the carbon. Okay? So kasi kailangan in complete combustions, no, yung oxygen kailangan enough siya or in excess in order for the carbons to be fully converted into carbon dioxide. However, if kulang yung oxygen, hindi mako-form yung carbon dioxide. So, ibig sabihin, pwede tayo mag-form ng soot and carbon monoxide. So, siguro you might be asking, paano sir naging incomplete yung oxygen dito? Okay, kasi, ito yung logic natin. If you remove this top part, itong lutuan na to, ano yung mga positions na pwede pasukan ng oxygen? So, the oxygen can enter on the sides and here on top. Okay? However, the time you place your lutuan, yung inyong kalan, basta yan, kalan to. Ano yung tawag dyan? Basta yan. By the time na ilagay mo, ayan dyan, halatang hindi nagluluto eh. So, by the time na ilagay mo yung kawali, ayun, wala rin kawali o kaya yung nilalagyanan ng kanin. Okay. By the time na ilagay mo yun doon, instead na yung oxygen pumasok sa taas, hindi na siya makakapasok. Okay, kasi it is blocked. Okay, so ibig sabihin the oxygen can just enter the sides. So since we have lesser amount of oxygen na, ano mangyayari? Soot can form, okay, because the combustion of carbon from your, let's say, uling is not complete. Okay, so ganun yung idea. So, pag nilagay mo yung lutuan dyan, yun, hindi na makapasok yung oxygen. That's why minsan nangingitim, okay? Because of the incomplete combustion. So, ano yung mga remedy doon, no? So, pag nagluluto kayo, if it doesn't require low heat naman, edi itodo nyo yung apoy, no? Okay? Mabilis siya maluto, pero the idea is that it will have higher temperature so that yung carbon, it will be completely oxidized talaga. It will be forced to be completely oxidized, okay? Then, kasi kapag low yung temperature ng fire natin, um, there are more chances for soot to appear, okay? Tignan nyo yung sa kandila, okay? In the candle, kuha tayong picture, candle. So, in your candle, ayan, di ba papansin nyo, when you place something on top of it, nangingitim talaga because the heat is very low. So, that's why the combustion is incomplete as well. Okay? So, yun. Tsaka, di ba, pag naglagay ka ng something sa ibabaw like this, okay? So, magiging, onti yung oxygen na papasok sa apoy. Okay? So, the combustion will not be really complete together with low temperature. Okay? Kaya, ayun, mag-form siya ng soot. Okay? And then, the other, byproduct of incomplete combustion would be the carbon monoxide. So, what is carbon monoxide? Okay, carbon monoxide is a very toxic gas. That's why some condo units and all condo units are required to have carbon monoxide detectors. Okay? Why why carbon monoxide, no? Hindi ba kayo nagtataka? Okay, so let us look at the Lewis structures of carbon monoxide and oxygen gas. Ano mapapansin nyo? They have similar molecular geometry. They are both linear. And parehas sila may oxygen sa isang side. But in oxygen gas, yung dalawang side may oxygen. So, what's the implication of this geometry in medicine? Okay, so, ganito. Since it looks very similar like oxygen gas, it can actually compete with binding to your hemoglobin. Okay? So, yung hemoglobin natin, we know it as oxygen carrier. It distributes oxygen we breathe in to the cells of our body. Okay? However, if you have carbon monoxide, tignan nyo, pareho sila ng itsura. Okay? So, that means, it can actually compete with the oxygen, no? When it binds to the hemoglobin. Okay? And actually, mas strong pa nga yung bonding ni carbon monoxide kay oxygen. Okay? So, mas malakas pa kapit nito sa hemoglobin kaysa sa oxygen. That's why, no, kailangan ng carbon monoxide detector because you cannot see yung carbon monoxide, you cannot smell it, no? Pero mafe-feel mo na lang kapag may build up na ng carbon monoxide sa nasusunog na building kunwari, hihimatayin ka na lang. Why? Because the oxygen in your blood decreases significantly. Kasi instead of oxygen being dissolved in your blood, yung carbon monoxide yung kumakabit sa blood nyo. Okay? So, that results in death. Okay? That's called hypoxia. Okay? Hypoxia. Asan yung ball pen? So, that results to death, no? By hypoxia, meaning the cells of your body, no, they are oxygen deprived. Okay? And then when they are oxygen deprived, what will happen? Yung metabolic process, it will stop producing energy. Okay? Kasi deprived ka na ng oxygen eh. So, your body will shut down. Okay? Hihimatayin ka. And then, if hindi ka ma-revive, you will die. Okay? Yun. And, yun. So, uso to sa mga sasakyan dati. Okay? And actually, this is one of the ways, ito medyo sensitive topic to. So, this is one of the ways, no, that the Nazis, no, killed our Jewish people, no. So, ginamit nila yung carbon monoxide and together with other chemicals, no, in their concentration camps. Okay? So, ayun lang. So, kasi nagbabasa ako ng mga diaries nila, no, Anne Frank, no, and then yung mga documentaries, no. So, ang pinaka-disturbing, so ito medyo disturbing ha. Okay. So, ang pinaka-disturbing na nalaman ko na during that time pala, since it is very rampant, no? Very rampant yung hatred against the Jews, no? So, even sa mga sasakyan, no? Ginagawa nila yung carbon monoxide produced by the vehicles. Yun yung ginagamit nila to exterminate them, no? Which is very sad. Okay. And kung ano yung point ko dito, that happened in the past, and kailangan matuto tayo from our past. Okay, so you should not always allow history to repeat itself, no? You always have to learn from your past. Alam niyo na kung ano point ko dito because you know what happened yesterday. Okay, so martial law. Okay, so yun lang. Okay, so learn from your past, do not forget it. Okay, and ayun, because if you forget your past, things will happen again. Okay, and wag naman sana. Okay, kasi uh, lahat tayo maghihirap. Lahat tayo mahihirapan. Okay, so yun lang. Ano ginawa ng mga car industry after that? Okay, kasi apparently cars before are very inefficient. Okay, kaya nga maraming carbon monoxide sila na po-produce. Okay, and some people in the modern times, no, they actually die of carbon monoxide poisoning inside the vehicle. Okay, so ano ginawa ng mga car manufacturer? They made this thing called the catalytic converter. Okay, kung may sasakyan kayo, tanongin nyo yung tatay nyo or nanay nyo, no, na nagda-drive, alam nila yung catalytic converter. Okay, so dapat alam nila yan. Okay, so what's the purpose of catalytic converter? This is a box, no, that is in your exhaust tubes, no, exhaust system ng sasakyan. Okay, so etong box na to, makikita mo siya before yung yung nasa dulo ng sasakyan. Okay, so what's the purpose of catalytic converter? Because we expect, no, that in cars over time they become less efficient in combusting fuel. Okay, so ang gagawin natin, so ginagawa ng catalytic converter is that the carbon monoxide produced by the combustion of fuel in your less efficient cars, no, mangyari is that this catalytic converter will continue the oxidation process to make carbon dioxide. Okay, so, siguro ang tataka kayo, di ba sir, dangerous yung carbon dioxide? Yeah, no. Because apparently this is the reason why in the future we might die because everything is too hot here in the world, no. Okay. So, itong carbon dioxide, no, greenhouse gas yan, pero mas okay ito na product kaysa naman sa carbon monoxide, no. Kasi kapag carbon monoxide yung ma-produce ng vehicle natin, mabilis yan, no? Mabilis yung kumabit sa hemoglobin natin. So, you will pass out ASAP. Okay, ASAP agad yun. However, kapag carbon dioxide yan, edi, you still have more time, no, to escape the vehicle, no, na nagpo-produce niyan. Okay? So, you still have more time to escape the room, no? Kasi, lesser naman yung binding properties niya kaysa kay carbon monoxide. Okay? So, yun yung reason, no? Para mas mabuhay ka. Okay? But apparently, again, just as I said, carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. So, therefore, we should shift to alternatives, no? Such as e-vehicles, no? But in the Philippines, onti pa lang yung may e-vehicles, primarily because mahal sila. Okay? So, ang idea lang dito, if you're going outside, no, mag-ride share na lang. Okay? Okay, gumamit na lang ng transport system para lesser yung CO2 per person, per capita. Okay? So, yun yung ways ng ating mga scientists, no, in order to prevent carbon monoxide poisoning because lots of horrendous deaths in the past, no, they are all attributed almost to the carbon monoxide. Okay? So, yun yung dahilan bakit tayo may catalytic converter sa sasakyan. Okay? Ayun. Makikita nyo yung incomplete combustion in older jeepneys. Okay? So, ako nung nagko-commute ako before, face-to-face classes pa nun na hindi nyo na-experience. Okay? So, face-to-face classes yun. From Valenzuela to Manila, no? Siyempre, puro jeep sasakyan ko, mga 2 jeep bago ako makapunta ng Manila. Okay. So, bale, ano, doon sa jeep na yon, pag luma yon, di ba mapapansin niyo yung lumang jeep, ang itim ng usok. Yung itim doon, that is actually the soot. Okay? Soot yon. Okay. Ayan. So, ibig sabihin nun, the combustion inside the vehicle is very inefficient. Okay? So, that's why kapag lumang jeepney, sobrang itim-itim ng usok nila. But kapag medyo bago yung jeepney, hindi ganun kaitim yung usok. And sometimes, walang itim na usok na kulay puti na kala mo nagbe-vape siya. Okay? So, yun. Yun yung idea. So, yung itim na lumalabas na yon sa tambucho, that is the soot. Okay? And we know that soot is a byproduct of incomplete combustion. So yeah, it is dangerous to inhale that because carbon particles yan eh. It can deposit in your lungs, and since it is not designed to be in your lungs, then it can lead to lung diseases, okay? And worse is cancer, okay? So, yun yung idea for combustion. Dami kong sinabi. So, pwede rin naman tayo mag-produce ng sandamukal na products na you can still produce CO2, carbon, and carbon monoxide. No? Pwede lahat yan mag-produce. Okay. But, for simplicity, we write them on separate equations. Okay? So, ganun. So, yun yung ating combustion reaction. Okay? So, nakita natin yung significance niya sa lutuan natin. Okay? Bakit nangingitim yung lutuan natin? Bakit yung tambucho ng sasakyan sobrang itim? And bakit may carbon monoxide detector sa condo? Okay? So, if you're living in condo, may nakita kayo nagbe-blink-blink sa taas. Yun. That's the carbon monoxide detector. Okay? That helps you to know if carbon monoxide is building up due to burning materials. Okay? So that means if that goes off, you have to escape the room ASAP. Okay? Kasi otherwise, manghihina ka na lang bigla and then you will pass out. Okay? Next part. Okay, so let's go to the next part. The reactions in aqueous solution. Okay, so most of the chemical reactions do happen in aqueous solution. When we say aqueous, meaning yan, our molecules or ions, they are all dissolved in water. Okay, nasa tubig sila. Okay, so for example, yung tang, ilagay mo sa tubig, aqueous solution yan. Okay, o yung asin, ilagay mo sa tubig, aqueous solution yan. Okay? So, the thing here is that for ionic compounds, no, when you place your ionic compounds in water, they dissociate or they ionize. Okay? Kaya yung inyong asin, pag nilagay nyo sa tubig, nawawala siya. Hindi yun magic. Ano yun? That's chemistry. Okay? Kasi yung tubig, yung asin, pag nilagay mo doon, what happens is that the water molecules can actually trap individual ions ng asin. So, isa-isa nila kukunin yan. Kunin nila to, kunin nila yan, kukunin nila yan to form these structures. Okay? So, the water molecule will surround the individual ions of your salt. So, that's why natutunaw siya. Okay? Nagdi-disappear siya because yung ating ions doon humahalo siya sa tubig talaga. Okay? So, that's dissociation process. Okay? And we show dissociation process in this manner. You have your ionic compound, and then after you have your ionic compound dissolved in water, magiging ions na siya. Okay, so by this time, kailangan alam nyo na paano mag-write ng ions. Okay? So, NaCl, just do the reverse crisscross. This will be Na plus, Cl minus. HCl, ano yung ions mo dyan? H plus, Cl minus. Okay? Another important thing for aqueous solutions that we indicate AQ. Okay? AQ meaning aqueous. Ibig sabihin they are in water. Okay? And in the body, okay, in the context of human biology, most of the liquids, most of the ions are obviously dissolved in water, okay? Because human is actually 65%, yung adult human, we are actually 65% water, okay? So, ibig sabihin, most of the things that are happening inside us are reactions in aqueous solution, okay? Kasi yung ating mga ions, nakahalo sila sa tubig, okay? So, ayun. So you should keep in mind, again, before I proceed with the next slide, that when you put your ionic compounds in water, they dissociate into ions. Okay? That is very important. Okay? So, eto ngayon, no? Not all liquids, no, when you combine them, they don't react, no, they don't produce any products. For example, you have your vinegar and your salt. Paghaluin mo yung dalawang yan, may mangyayari ba? Sasabog ba yan? Hindi. Paghaluin nyo yung toyo and vinegar, may nangyari ba? Wala. Adobo yung nangyari. So the idea is that not all liquids, no, not all solutions, when you combine them, hindi lahat magpo-produce ng reaction. However, there are some that produces reaction. Okay? So, ngayon, paano mo malalaman kung magkakaroon ng reaction? Okay? So, here are the criteria, no, that should be met in order for the solutions to react against one another. Okay? So, kahit isa lang dito yung ma-satisfy niya, good yun. Okay? So, these are the requirements, no, for reactions in aqueous solution to occur. Otherwise, kapag hindi na-meet tong criteria na to, walang mangyayari. Magdi-dissolve lang sila to form homogeneous mixture. Okay? So, sabi dito, a mixture of different aqueous solutions may produce chemical reaction if, letter A, there are ions that can combine to form insoluble substances. That's called precipitation reaction. B, there are ions that can neutralize each other, forming neutral substances called the acid-base reaction. And C, the species present can transfer electron. So these are the three requirements, no, in order for reactions in aqueous solution to occur. Okay? Kasi kapag hindi na-meet itong tatlong to, no reaction. Okay? Tulad ng suka at toyo. Okay? Pang-adobo lang siya. Pero walang reaction doon. Okay? So now, let's proceed with the first one. Okay? So itong dalawa, discuss natin to. And then this one, next meeting ta. Okay? Kasi masyadong mahaba yun eh. So let's begin with the precipitation reaction. So, just as I said earlier, no, precipitation reactions are reactions in which insoluble products are formed. When we say insoluble product, edi hindi siya natutunaw sa tubig. Okay? So, let's take a look at these pictures here, which I got from YouTube. Okay? So, you have your magnesium sulfate solution here and the sodium hydroxide solution here. These two are clear solutions, no? Yung white dun sa ilalim, that is just a reflection of light. Okay? So, ano nangyari? So, clear solution yan, and again yung white, ilaw lang yan. Okay? So, they are both clear solution. However, when you mix them, look at what happened. It turned into a cloudy solution. Okay. Ano yung cloud na yon? Okay, yung cloud na yon, they are actually solid particles, no? And yes, you can separate them from the mixture. Ang tawag natin sa solid particles that are formed when you mix two substances, ang tawag doon ay insoluble compounds, also known as precipitate. Okay? So, kapag pinaghalo mo yung dalawang chemicals, biglang nag-form siya ng cloudy solution, big sabihin may precipitate ka. Okay? So, you have a precipitate there. Okay? So, our precipitates could be solid or in colloidal, and the idea is that you can separate them from your solution. Okay? So, in the case of this example here, yung iyong white na yan, magsisettle yan sa ilalim. Okay? Just let it stand under the influence of gravity. So yung solid particles, they can settle down at the bottom of the beaker. Okay? So I will give you another another picture for that. Teka lang. Let me just pull up a picture in Google. Precipitation. Reaction. Yan. So, here are some examples of precipitation reaction. Ayan. So, this is probably lead iodide, okay, because it's yellow. So, you can see, you have two clear liquids here. Clear sila. But, when you combine them, they form this yellow solid stuff. And as you can see, nasa ilalim na yung solid stuff na. So, yeah, that's precipitation reaction. Okay? Yan na. Yan. You will form insoluble products, and again, the idea is that you can separate this from your liquids. You can filter them. Okay? Ayan. Ito yung gusto ko sa chem, very colorful. Ang ganda kasi. Anyway, so, ayan, balik ulit tayo sa discussion. So, ito yung question natin, no? Look at the equation. This is just double displacement, right? Yung Mg naging OH partner niya, yung sodium naging sulfate partner niya. Okay? So, double displacement lang yan. Pero, kailan mo malalaman if solid yung precipitate mo? Okay? When will you know kung solid yung iyong product? Okay? So, in order for you to know if solid yan, we have to learn the solubility rules. Okay? So, the solubility rules, this is a table which you should be familiar with, no? Kung kaya i-memorize, gawin nyo. Pero, sa ngayon, just be familiar na lang. Okay? So, the solubility rules can help us predict if we form a precipitate or not. Okay? So, basahin natin very quickly yung content, and then later on, let's apply it to some problems. Okay? Nabasahin natin. So, solubility rules for ionic compound. This is in your textbook. So, kung may textbook na kayo dyan sa inyo, nasa chapter 4 tayo. Okay? Sabi, usually soluble. Ito yung mga ions. Then, ano yung mga sinabi about them. Okay? So, lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, ammonium. Ano sabi about these ions? All group 1 alkali metal and ammonium salts are soluble. Ibig sabihin, regardless of their partner, they will always be soluble. They will not form precipitate. Ano pa? Nitrates. All nitrates are soluble. Ibig sabihin nun, nitrates, regardless of the cation, soluble yan. Walang precipitate. Chlorides, bromides, iodides. All common chlorides, bromides, iodides are soluble except when your cation is silver, mercury, and lead. Okay? So, yun yung meaning niya dito. So, kapag pinartner mo yan sa ibang metals, matutunaw siya except silver, mercury, and lead. Okay? So, ibig sabihin nun, kapag si lead ang partner ni Cl, magpe-precipitate yun. Okay? Si iodide, ang partner niya ay si silver, magpe-precipitate yun. Okay? So, yan. So, ganun yung basahin, ha? So, soluble siya except these cations. Okay? Kapag ito yung partner nila, precipitation yan. Next one, sulfates. So, sabi dito, sulfates. Most sulfates are soluble except calcium, strontium, barium, and lead. Okay? Ibig sabihin, if ang sulfate, hindi ito yung partner niya, soluble siya. But, if the partner of your sulfate are the calcium, strontium, barium, and lead ions, okay, kapag yan yung partner niya, precipitate yan. Okay? And then lastly, we have the acetate. All acetates are soluble. So, regardless of whatever their cation is, they will always be soluble. Okay? So, yun yung first part ng table natin, usually soluble. Ibig sabihin, kapag sinabing except, precipitate sila. Okay. So now, let's go to the next part, the usually insoluble. Okay? So, we have the phosphate, carbonate, hydroxides, and sulfides. Okay? So, for phosphates and carbonates, they are all insoluble except when you pair them with ammonium and group 1 metals. Okay? Because remember, ammonium and group 1 metals, they are always soluble. Ibig sabihin, kung kapartner nila ay sodium, potassium, lithium, madidissolve sila. Okay? However, when you pair them with other metals, okay, pag hindi siya group 1 or hindi siya ammonium, it will form precipitate. One example of which is your mga stalactite, stalagmites sa kuweba. Yun ay gawa sa calcium carbonate. Okay? And we know calcium carbonate is solid. Okay? Kasi sabi dito, ang carbonate natin, insoluble siya except when paired with ammonium and group 1. Yung calcium natin, group 2. So, ibig sabihin, hindi siya kasama sa except. Meaning, siya ay insoluble talaga. Okay? So, that's why yung ating mga, kuweba, they are rich in stalactite formation, stalagmite formation. That's primarily due to the calcium carbonate dissolved in water. No? They settle down because it is a precipitate. Okay, and I actually happened to see one of them, na malapitan, and grabe. Na, maganda siya. Maganda siya. Pero bawal mo hawakan kasi it's fragile. Okay? So yun, nakikita mo yung water, it's dripping down dun sa formation. Ang ganda lang. Okay? Then you have your hydroxide. Sabi dito, hydroxides are insoluble unless you pair them with ammonium group 1 and strontium, barium, calcium. Okay? So insoluble talaga siya. Pero kapag i-partner mo siya sa ammonium group 1, strontium, barium, calcium, soluble na siya. Okay? So yan. That's why yung ating sodium hydroxide, yun yung nasa liquid sosa, nahahalo siya sa tubig. Okay? Kasi yun yung sinabi dito sa solubility rules. Okay? Sodium is group 1 metal, so it makes the hydroxide soluble. Siguro na kikita nyo itong word na slightly, no? So when you see this slightly, just disregard this for now because we will discuss this again in analytical chemistry. Okay? We will learn there about the solubilities again. No? Di-discuss uli natin ito. Basta kapag slightly nakita nyo, consider it as fully soluble. And then lastly, we have the sulfides. Okay, so sulfides are insoluble except those of ammonium group 1, group 2. Okay, so yan. So sulfides, insoluble siya unless you pair it with ammonium group 1 and group 2. Magnesium, calcium, barium are only slightly soluble. Okay? So basta ang iyong katayon ay ito, group 1 at group 2, soluble siya. Okay? Sa Ilog Pasig, no, we did a research, no, nung high school kami, nung college kami. Okay. So in college kami, we did a research on the chemicals that are dissolved in Pasig River because PUP is beside Pasig River. So para makapag-research kami, dudungaw lang kami sa ilog. No? Dudungaw lang kami o kaya we ride the ferry. Okay. Suki kami ng ferry dun. Feeling mo ko na rin nasa Roro. Feeling mo nasa Titanic ka. Okay, so ganun, we collect waters in Pasig River a lot, no, nung college kami. Okay, and we discovered that yung Pasig River water, may lead content siya and other heavy metals, no. So ano yung punto ko dito? Okay, the reason bakit siya kulay black, okay, kulay black yung tubig sa Pasig River, mga gray, no, basta hindi siya clear. Okay, so gray, black, no. The reason for that is yung sulfide. Okay, so yung sulfide, when it mixes with other metals such as lead, kulay itim yun. Okay, so that's why yung ating Pasig River nangingitim-ngitim na because it's contaminated with sulfides and heavy metals. Okay, so yun, kaya siya maitim, other than yung human waste na tinatapon doon. Very disgusting, pero yun yung idea. Okay, so siguro you might be asking, sir, saan galing yung sulfide, no? Of course, you have living things there. No? You have decomposing matter as well there, no? And one of the byproducts of decomposition of some matter is the sulfides. Okay, so yan. So yun yung reason that may sulfide done. Okay, so yan yung ating solubility rules, and again, you have to remember them. Okay, if hindi kaya kabisaduhin, you just write it in your index card or you print out the slides. Okay, so ayun, these are used in order to predict whether a precipitate will form. Okay, so in the context of the previous question kanina, we have this thing here. Okay, sabi ko, this is just double displacement because you can see nag-swap lang sila ng partner. How will you know if you have a precipitate? So again, sabi ko, look at the solubility rules. Okay? So, ganito yung proper way of answering that question. Okay? So, first you begin with your reactants. And then your reactants, ano gagawin niya? Since they are in aqueous solution, you dissolve them. So, yung magnesium sulfate, dissolve mo siya. Sodium hydroxide, dissolve mo siya. So, ito yung mga ions mo. Okay? And, itong ions natin, they can pair up. Okay? So, ang original partner natin na ions ay okay, so ang original partner ng ions natin ay Mg2 plus SO4 minus 2, Na plus OH minus. So, gagawin mo, pag naging ion na sila, you switch partners lang. Yung sodium, ipapartner ko siya kay sulfate. And then yung magnesium, ipapartner ko na siya kay hydroxide. And then once na mag-swap na ako ng partner, I will check my solubility rules. Okay? So according to the solubility rules, itong sodium, it will always be soluble. So ibig sabihin, the combination of sodium and sulfate, it will be soluble. Ayan, sabi dito, di ba? Ayan, they are always soluble. Okay? Sodium is always soluble. Okay? How about magnesium hydroxide? Walang sinabi about magnesium, pero may sinabi about hydroxide. Ano sabi about hydroxides? Hydroxides are soluble if ang partner nila ay ammonium group 1, strontium, barium, calcium. Soluble siya kapag yun yung partner. Pero kapag hindi yun yung partner, insoluble siya. Magnesium is group 2 metal. May sinabi ba ditong group 2? Wala. So, walang sinabi na group 2. So, ibig sabihin, this is insoluble agad. Okay? So, kapag hindi sinabi doon na soluble siya, edi insoluble. Okay? So, yan. So, that's the reason why we know that magnesium hydroxide is a precipitate. And obviously, for you to determine their correct formula, you do the crisscross. Okay? So, this is one of the products, and this one is one of the products as well. Okay? So, yung crisscross lang yan. And you know that this is soluble because of this rule here. This one is insoluble. Okay? By the way, sometimes I just write PPT, meaning yan, precipitate. Okay? So, ganun lang. You just check this. After you swap the partners, you check the solubility rules. Okay? So, yan. So, that means we can write the entire equation as this. No? So, that means we can write the entire equation as this. Okay? So, gagawin mo, you convert them into ions and then you swap partners. Okay? So, this is your molecular equation. Okay, so that's your molecular equation, and you know that magnesium hydroxide is a precipitate. Precipitates are usually indicated with an S, no? With S. No? Okay, so yan, lalagyan mo siya ng S to indicate na solid yan, precipitate siya. Okay, in older textbook, you will see itong arrow na to. Meaning ng arrow na pababa na yan, that's a precipitate. No? It will fall down sa beaker. Okay? So, yan. So, that's your molecular equation, and obviously, you need to balance it. But in our case, that's not our concern sa ngayon. Okay? So, because sa laboratory yung balancing. Okay? So, again, molecular equation. These are chemical equations whose species are represented as molecules or one entire unit. So, the idea here is that yung ating ions, no, pagsamahin mo sila. Okay? You do the crisscross. How about ionic equation? In ionic equation, all aqueous species are converted into ions. Aqueous species lang. Kapag solid yan, you don't convert them into ions. Okay? Kasi alam mo solid na yan eh. Hindi na yan maghihiwalay. Okay? So, yan. So, yeah. So, ionic equation, all you have to do is to convert your AQs, no? Yung AQ mo, into ions. So, magnesium sulfate, ano magagawa mo dyan? Mg, SO4, sodium hydroxide, ano magagawa mo dyan? Sodium hydroxide. Yung magnesium hydroxide, since solid yan, you just copy it. Wala kang gagawin. Then, sodium sulfate, sodium and sulfate. Okay? So, yan. Again, if solid yan, you're not going to do anything about it. You just copy it. But for aqueous species, you separate them again into ions. Pag-iwalayin mo uli sila. Why? Kasi, makikita mo dito that when you separate them into ions, you can cancel out similar terms. Okay? When I say similar terms, those are ions that exist in the left and on the right side of the equation. Okay? So, pareha sila nag-exist on the left and on the right side. Ano yung ions na yan? So, that's sodium and sulfate. Kikita mo, they both exist, no? These two ions both exist in the left and on the right side of the equation. Okay? So, yung magnesium and yung hydroxide, hindi siya maka-cancel out. Kasi, remember, in solid, you don't separate them into ions. So, you just copy it as is. So, ibig sabihin, you really cannot cancel them. Okay? So, ano tawag dun sa mga kinancel out ko? So, the thing, no, that I canceled out, we call them spectator ions. When you say spectator ions, no, ang meaning niyan is that these are ions that doesn't participate in the precipitation reaction. Okay? So, hindi sila nag-join sa precipitation reaction. Instead, sila ay, ano lang, observer. Okay? So, spectator, no, natingin lang. Marites. Marites, nakikichismis lang. Sabi na, uy, naghalo na sila. Tapos chismis na nila sa iba. Okay? So, those are our spectator ions, which are just observing the equation. Nothing happens to them. Okay? And yung tawag sa natira natin na ions, now, when you combine them, ang tawag dun sa natira is the net ionic equation. Ito yan. The net ionic equation shows us what really happened in the reaction. Okay? Pinapakita niya ano ba talaga yung nangyaring precipitation. Okay? So again, tatlong ways to nire-represent. We have the molecular equation, we have the ionic equation, and the net ionic equation. In molecular equation, we write them as one entire unit. Okay? Ionic compound formula yan. In ionic equation, all AQ, no, lahat ng aqueous, convert them into ions. Pag may precipitate ka, don't split them. Okay? And then last one, you have your net ionic equation wherein you need to cancel similar ions that exist on the left and on the right side of your equation. Okay, so we call them spectator ions because they are just observants, no? So a chemical reaction, and they don't really help, no, in advancing the reaction. Nakatingin lang sila. Okay, yan. So, I know this is new to you, no? So that's why we need to answer some exercises. Okay. Magsasagot ako ng dalawang exercise. So I will answer. Sige, I will answer the first two. Ay, tatlo na. Ito na pala. May sagot na tayo. Burahin ko muna ulit. Okay. Wala na. So, magsasagot ako ng dalawang items. Okay? So that we can further improve your understanding of the precipitation reaction, because again, I know that this is new to most of you, okay? Especially if you're not from STEM background, okay? So that's okay lang because ito, tinuturo ko na siya. So, sabi dito, predict if a precipitate will form upon mixing the following substances. Right, the molecular equation and the net ionic equation. So first, pagaluin daw natin yung sodium sulfate and barium chloride. Okay? So, sige, let's do that, no? So, we have number 1. Let's mix the sodium sulfate and barium chloride. Okay? So, there are just several steps, no, that you need to take. So, step 1, dissociate. Okay? You dissociate your reactants. Okay? So, Na2, SO4, BaCl2. So, ano yung ions na pwede mo magawa? You do reverse crisscross. Na+, SO4, -2. For barium chloride, you do the reverse crisscross. Barium 2+, Cl-. So, that's the first step. You separate them into individual ions. Step 2 is for you to swap your partners. Okay, so swap the ion partners. So originally, that's sodium and sulfate. However, since we are going to swap them, it will now be a pair of sodium and chloride ions. Same thing goes to barium and sulfate. Okay? So mag-swap na sila. And then you write the equation. Okay? You write their formula correctly. Okay? You do reverse crisscross na. Mag-crisscross ka dyan ulit. So this will be NaCl. This will be PaSO4. Okay? And you do, you swap the partners and then you combine them again. Okay? So, yan. These are your products. However, it is important for us to know if precipitate yan. Okay? So, let us check if one of them is a precipitate. Okay? So, paano natin titignan kung precipitate yan? We use the solubility rules. Ayan. Ano yung ions natin? Let me just rewrite the ions here. Okay. So these are our ions. Sodium chloride, barium sulfate. So let's check if one of them is a precipitate. Okay. Sodium chloride, obviously, hindi yan precipitate. Bakit? Ayan na. Sodium, ang sabi. Basta sodium ang iyong cation, it will always be soluble. So this thing is soluble. Okay. So let me just cross it out. So this will be soluble. How about the barium sulfate? Tingin tayo. Sulfates. Ayan. May sinabi sa sulfate. Sabi, most sulfates are soluble except, ayun barium sulfate. So, ando na siya mismo. So, that means, since under siya sa except, ibig sabihin, this one is a precipitate. Okay? So, this thing here is a precipitate because, sinabi dito mismo most sulfates are soluble except calcium, strontium, barium, and lead. Okay? So, this is barium sulfate. It is a precipitate. Kasi sinabi dito, except, soluble except this. Okay? This is precipitate. Okay? So, yan. So, we know na that this one is soluble and this one is a precipitate. Okay? So, step 3. Step 3, you write your molecular equation. You just copy your reactant again. Just copy your reactant again. And then your products, yung de Noble displacement mo. But since you know that this one is a precipitate, okay? So again, just as I said in the previous slides kanina, if you have a precipitate, you write letter S. Okay? Kasi solid yan. Okay, solid siya. Ayun. But for everything else, kahit wag mo na siya lagyan ng S, kahit wag mo na lagyan ng AQ. Okay? Basta ang idea is that sila ay hahalo sa tubig. Okay? They are soluble. Pero for barium sulfate, you have to indicate the S, meaning siya ay precipitate. Okay? So, this is the molecular equation. And take note, this is unbalanced. Kayo na bahala mag-balance niyan. Okay? Hindi naman yan yung concern natin ngayon. Next, sa sinabi sa problem natin, you have to find the net ionic equation. So, paano kinukuha yung net ionic equation? So, you have to convert your molecular equation first into ionic equation. So, lahat gawing ions except for the precipitate. Okay? So, gawin ko uli yung ions dito. Basically, you just copy whatever you have written there. Okay, so sodium chloride,
dissolve them into ions. But for barium sulfate, hindi siya paghihiwalayan because it is solid. Okay? Okay, so again, the idea is that for net ionic equation, you write the ionic equation muna. Everything should be converted into ions except for the precipitate. Okay, you just copy it as a whole. And then, you cancel out similar terms. Ano yung mga similar terms dito? Sodium, meron sa left, meron sa right. Chloride, meron sa left, meron sa right. Okay? So, that means your spectator ions are sodium and chloride. Okay? And then your net ionic equation is kung ano yung natira. Ano ba yung natira? Barium pati sulfate. Okay? So, yan. That's how you do it. Okay? So again, basically the principle of this lesson is that this is a double displacement reaction. And after you do the double displacement reaction, anong gagawin mo? You check for precipitates, okay? So you look at the solubility rules. If kaya nyo kabesaduhin, better. If hindi kaya kabesaduhin, that's fine with me. Okay, you can print out the slide naman. Okay, so you just check your solubility rules if ever may precipitate done. Okay, if a precipitate uh, can be formed, no, you proceed with a step 3 and step 4. Okay, so yan. So pag may precipitate ka na buo, tuloy ka sa step 3, step 4. Okay? Bakit? No. Ibig sabihin ko ba doon ay pwedeng walang precipitate? Pwede. Okay. So kapag walang precipitate, ano ibig sabihin ko? Hindi, wag ka na tumuloy dito at wag ka na tumuloy doon. Ang idea kasi is that if you don't form any precipitate, no, sa precipitation reaction, ibig sabihin no reaction yan. Okay. Okay. Pag ang mga nagawa mo ay soluble products, no, ano yan, no reaction yan. Katulad ng toyo, pati ng suka, no? Pag aluin mo yan, kahit anong gawin mo, walang mabubuo dyan na precipitate, okay? Because all the ions there are soluble, okay? So yan, so soluble kasi sila lahat. That's why, no reaction, okay? So yun yung sinabi ko kanina, di ba? So remember, in this slide here, no? If your ions combine to form insoluble substances, then dun lang magkakaroon ng reaction. Ibig sabihin, kung hindi nila kaya to gawin, no reaction. Okay? So, yun yung idea natin. So, I will answer another item. Okay? By the way, you can take a screenshot. Ayan. So, sige, you can take a screenshot. So, bali, I will answer another item, no, para mas ma-emphasize natin yung point. Okay? So, yun. So, siguro okay na kayo mag-screenshot. So, I'll proceed with the next one. Dito na lang sa baba. Okay. So, the next item in Canva, in the PowerPoint is this one. Copper 2 nitrate and ammonium sulfate. Okay. So, let's check if a precipitate can be formed from these two ionic compounds. Okay. So, again, step 1, dissociate. Okay, you convert them into ions. So by now you should know how to dissociate na, no? That is just reverse crisscross. And na-discuss na natin yan last time. Okay, so reverse crisscross, copper 2 plus, NO3 minus. Crisscross, this will be ammonium ion and sulfate ion. Step 2, ano gagawin? Swap partners. Okay, So originally it's copper and nitrate na magka-partner, but now it will be copper and sulfate, ammonium and nitrate. Okay? So ano yung mabubuo natin na ionic compound dito? This will be copper 2 sulfate and this will be ammonium nitrate. Okay? So ganun lang. So now, so we did the double displacement reaction. We swapped the cations. We determined their corresponding formula. Ano susunod na gagawin? Next thing you're going to do is to check the solubility rules. Balik ulit tayo dito. Yan. So ano uli yan? Copper sulfate and ammonium nitrate. Okay? So yun yung ating ions. Tingin tayo sa solubility rules kung may sinabi about them. Okay? So start tayo kay ammonium nitrate. Bakit? Tignan nyo. For ammonium, soluble daw siya. For nitrate, soluble daw siya. Ibig sabihin, this is entirely soluble. Okay? So soluble yan, buong yan. Okay? So yan, nasagot na tayo. So this one will be soluble. How about copper sulfate? Copper sulfate, tingin tayo, ano sinabi? Ayun, sulfate. Sabi, most sulfates are soluble except for calcium, strontium, barium, lead. Ano ba yung kapartner ni sulfate? Copper. Siya ba ay calcium? Hindi. Strontium ba yung copper? Hindi. Barium ba yung copper? Hindi. Lead ba yung copper? Hindi. Okay? So basically, this is soluble. Kasi sabi dito, they are soluble unless ang partner nila ay calcium, strontium, barium, lead. Okay? Eh kaso, copper 2 eh. So, ibig sabihin, this one should be soluble as well. Okay? So, since ito ay soluble then, okay? So, this is soluble. This is another soluble product. Okay? Ano yung sabi ko? Kapag pare soluble yan, no reaction na yan. Okay? Okay, so no reaction na yan. Okay, no reaction. So, walang mangyayari. You will not form any precipitate. No reaction. So, kapag no reaction, wag ka na tumuloy sa step 3, step 4. Kasi, pag tinuloy mo yon, sayang lang yung ink ng ballpen mo. Okay? Okay. So, yun yung idea. If you don't form any precipitate, then tawag doon, no reaction. Okay? No reaction. But, if you form a precipitate, just like this one, you continue. Okay? Tuloy-tuloy mo yan. Okay? So again, so just take a picture of this one. Again, kapag parehas soluble, no reaction. Pag may isang insoluble, may reaction. Okay? Paano sir, kung dalawa silang insoluble, pwede ba yon? Pwede. Okay, pwede yun mangyari ata. Okay. So, edi tuloy mo lang. Okay? Pero yun nga, no, kapag parehas sila soluble, hindi na worth it no, to continue to step 3. Because later on, they will eventually cancel out each other. No? Wala kang net ionic equation. Bakit wala kang net ionic equation? Kasi soluble to, soluble to, soluble to, soluble to. Basically, you can cancel all of them. Okay? So, wala kang net ionic equation. Therefore, that means you don't have any reactions at all. Okay? So, yun. So, ito yung sinasabi ko kanina na not all liquids, no? Not all aqueous solution produce a reaction when you combine them. There are just few of them that produces reactions. Okay? Okay, so I hope may screenshot na kayo. And then,
I will answer one last item, then kayo na bahala sa iba. Okay, so ayan.
One last item. We have aluminum nitrate and sodium hydroxide. Okay? So I will try that one. Dito na lang. Naantok ako. Aluminum nitrate. Okay?
So these are our two ionic
Compounds. Let's check if we can form a precipitate. Step 1, dissociate. Itong mga steps na nilalagay ko, this is just for demonstration purposes. But when you do it in your on your own na, okay, you can actually not write step 1, step 2, okay? Okay, ginagawa ko lang by step so that alam nyo kung ano gagawin, okay? Pero ako, kaya naman i-mental yan, okay? So, ganun lang. But I have to show it this way para mas clear sa atin. I hope na clear nga, okay? So, the ions we get here are aluminum ion and nitrate ions. Sodium hydroxide. Ano yung ions mo dyan? Na plus and OH minus. Step 2. Ano gagawin mo sa step 2 again? You swap partners. Okay, swap partners. So this will be paired with that. This will be paired with that. Okay. So aluminum hydroxide, sodium nitrate. You combine them. So what's the formula? This will be AlOH3, and sodium nitrate will be NaNO3. Okay, so now we have the products. Let's check if they are precipitates. Okay, so again, anong gagawin to determine if they are precipitate? You have to go to the solubility table. Ito, solubility table. Ano yun? Aluminum hydroxide. And then,
ano yung isa?
Sodium nitrate. Oopsie. Okay. So, yung sodium nitrate, alam mo na, soluble talaga to. Bakit? Ayun, sinabi oh. Sodium, soluble. Nitrate, soluble. Okay? So, this is already soluble. How about aluminum hydroxide? Tingin tayo dito sa table. Walang sinabi about aluminum, pero may sinabi about hydroxides. Ano sabi? Hydroxides are soluble if they are paired with ammonium, group 1, and strontium, barium, calcium. Okay? So, soluble siya if partner niya ay ammonium, group 1, o kaya strontium, barium, calcium. Ang aluminum, anong group yan? Group 3 yan sa periodic table, right? So, ibig sabihin nun, it is insoluble. Okay? So, kasi wala siya dito sa except dito eh. Okay? So, again, sinasabi ito, insoluble yan, except when you pair it with this. However, aluminum does not fall under those exemptions sa rules, no? Okay? So, hindi siya kasama doon sa except, no? Okay? So, group 3 kasi siya. So, ibig sabihin, it will always be insoluble. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, this one is insoluble. Okay? So, since we have a precipitate, you can continue to step 3. Okay? So, this one is a precipitate. This is soluble. And you can continue to step 3. Step 3, molecular equation. So that's aluminum nitrate, sodium hydroxide, sodium nitrate, and aluminum hydroxide solid. Okay, so again, you have to indicate solid if yan ay precipitate. Okay, so that's your molecular equation. Step 4, your net ionic equation. So, anong gagawin mo sa net ionic equation? You convert everything into ions except the solid one. So, that's Al3 plus, nitrate, sodium hydroxide. Okay? And then sodium nitrate, split them. And then you copy the solid. Okay, yung solid, wag mo i-split. Okay, so yan. And you you cancel similar terms, sodium and nitrate. Okay, and ano yung natira? Ang natira ay aluminum OH minus, producing the final product. So that's your net ionic equation. Okay? So ganun lang. You really just have to be familiar with the solubility rules. Okay? So again, you can take a screenshot of this one. Okay? Sakit ng likod ka. Okay, so ganun lang. Okay? So for the remaining items, kayo na bahala. Okay? Kayo na bahala magsagot. Okay? So, kayo na bahala sa 3, 4, and 5. Okay? So, yan. Next one, let's proceed with the acid-base reaction. So, in the acid-base reaction, ano meron dito? Okay, so in acid-base reaction, ito yung sinasabi na second criteria. No? So, yung first criteria kasi, kailangan daw, they produce insoluble product. Ang ikalawang criteria na sinabi kanina, they can neutralize each other. So what's that word, no? Ano ba meaning ng neutralize sa chemistry? When we say neutralize, we are pertaining to the H plus, the hydronium ion, and the OH minus. Okay? So these two ions can neutralize each other. Okay? Okay? Ano meaning na neutralize? Yung H plus kasi, mababa acidity niyan. Hydroxide, mataas yung mababa pH na to. Ito mataas yung pH na. So this is pH below 7. This one is pH greater than 7. Okay? So yan. So, pag sinabi natin neutralize, pag pinagsama mo sila, maging pH 7 sila. Okay? So yan. Yun yung meaning ng neutralize sa chem. Okay? Yung mga pH na yan, di-discuss natin yan sa analytical chem next sem. Okay? So, yun yung idea na. So, this is acidic, this is basic. When you combine them, you form neutral compound, which is water. Water is neutral, diba? Okay, so, kaya siya tinawag na neutralization reaction. Again, keep in mind that in the nomenclature last week, sabi natin kapag acid, H plus ang kanyang cation. Pag sinabing bases, OH ang kanyang anion. Okay, so this H plus OH can combine to form water. So again, this is just double displacement. Okay, but instead of forming precipitate, our priority now is to look for water. Okay, so hindi na precipitate yung priority natin dito, ha? Kasi this is acid base. So our priority is yung tubig. Okay, so let's hear some example. So again, as I told you, this is a double displacement reaction. So you split them first into ions, and then you swap partners. No? So this will be partnered with that, this will be partnered with that. Okay? You just swap partners. So by swapping partners, you will form water and sodium chloride. Okay? Very easy. Ganun lang. So let's try this questions here. Predict the product and determine if there will be precipitates now. So sometimes in acid-base reaction, sometimes
we form precipitate then. Okay? Sometimes we form, sometimes wala. Pero, again, since this is acid-base reaction, it's not really our priority to determine the precipitate na. Okay, so, hindi naman kailangan mag-form ng precipitate. Pero, let's check lang kung may precipitate na ma-form. Okay? So, let's try this one. Copper 3 hydroxide and phosphoric acid. Okay, so let's determine the ions we can get from this one. That will be copper 3 plus, OH minus. Again, I'm doing the reverse crisscross mentally. So this will be H plus and that will be PO4 minus 3. And then you switch partners. This will be partnered with that. This thing will be partnered with that. Okay. So what will be the formula of the products? What will be the formula of the product? So that will be H2O plus CO3, PO4, negative 3. If they have the same exponent, you can just ignore them. Okay. So, yan. Kasi kapag rinis-cross mo yung same exponent, diba, you can cancel them out later on. Okay, kasi same sila ng subscript. Okay, so these are our products, water and phosphate, copper 3 phosphate. And as you can see, water is produced, therefore it is an acid-base reaction. Ito yung salt na sinasabi kanina. Okay. And when you say salt, it's not a NaCl lang. Okay. When you say salt, it is ionic compound. Okay. Such as this one. So now, let's check kung precipitate din ba yan. Okay. Balik ulit tayo sa solubility rules. Copper phosphate. Copper 3 phosphate. Naantok talaga ako. Yung pag kabisado mo na nakakaantok na siya. Pag hindi kabisado, wala tayong karapatang antukin. Anyway, so ano yung compound natin? Copper phosphate, di ba? Yeah, so copper phosphate yan. O, tingin tayo. May sinabi ba about copper phosphate? Wala dito. Ayan, phosphate. Okay, so ano sabi dito sa phosphate? All phosphates are insoluble except those of ammonium and group 1. So, ibig sabihin, kapag ang phosphate, kapartner niya si ammonium o kaya group 1, soluble siya. Kasi sabi doon, except insoluble except pag ito at ito yung partner. Kaso, ano yung partner ni phosphate dito? Copper, no? Okay. So, since copper yun, edi insoluble yun. Okay? Kasi hindi naman yun ammonium, hindi naman siya group 1. Okay? So, that means, other than the acid-base reaction, we also have a precipitate formed. Okay? So, may precipitate din tayong nabuo. Okay? By the way, di ba sa precipitation reaction, we write letter S kapag may precipitate. Sa acid base, may nilalagay din tayo kay water. Nilalagay natin kay water ay L. L meaning liquid na. Yung L sa chemistry, that is only used for solvents lang. Okay, so the L is only used for solvents such as water. Okay? Water is a solvent. Yan yung ginagamit pantunaw Okay? So, you write L doon. Okay, so again, kapag precipitation, letter S. Kapag acid-base, letter L yung ilalagay for water. Okay? And again, just to reiterate, hindi naman necessary na may precipitate na. Meron man yan o wala, okay lang as long as you form water. Okay, so this will be the last item that I will answer. Okay, last na to, kayo na bahala sa iba uli. So, number 2, ayan, so sagutan natin to. Aluminum hydroxide, nitric acid. Determine the ions you can get from here. Crisscross, Al3+, OH-. Okay.
This will be H plus and NO3 minus. Switch partners, okay, because this is double displacement. So your products are H2O, liquid, and aluminum nitrate. No? Okay, so yan. And again, based on the solubility rules, nitrates are soluble. So, ibig sabihin, this is not a precipitate. Okay? So, hindi mo kailangan maglagay ng S dyan. Kasi, hindi yan precipitate. Okay? So, that's all for our discussion today. Yung next discussion, sa susunod na ta. Okay? Medyo marami kasi yan. Hindi kaya ng oras. Okay? So, we learned today. Okay? So, we basically just had a review of your chemical reactions in your high school. Pero sabi ko nga sa inyo, that's so high school, dagdagan natin. So, we discussed combustion reaction. This is a reaction of fuels, okay, to produce carbon dioxide and water. And sometimes, if it is incomplete, it produces soot, yung carbon na kulay itim, sa ilalim ng lutuan natin. Ayan. And carbon monoxide, the toxic gas, which can compete with oxygen, no, causing hypoxia to people. Okay? And then, ayun, then we have the reactions in aqueous solution. The idea first is that when you put them in water, they dissociate. Okay? Not all aqueous solutions form a product. Hindi lahat ng pinaghahalo nagfo-form ng product. So, that means there are some criteria to be met na in order for reactions to take place. So, ito yung tatlong criteria na yan. Okay? Yan. Okay, so let's talk about precipitation. Sabi ko, precipitation reactions, these are reactions in which you form solid products. How will you know if you have a solid product? Use the solubility rules. You can remember them, pero kahit hindi na, okay lang. Ako, kabisado ko yan, no? Okay? Pero, hindi naman kailangan masyadong kabisado. Okay? So, you can just print this out na. Yan. And then, how will you know if a precipitate is formed? Just use the solubility rules. Okay? Swap the partners, determine the formula, and check if they are precipitates. Okay? Yan. So in precipitation, we have three types of equation. The molecular equation, which shows our ionic compounds as a whole. And then we have our ionic equation wherein all aqueous species are converted into ions. But the solid one, the precipitate, should not be written as ions. Then yung ating ions, they can be cancelled out. Tawag sa kinancel out natin ay spectator. Yung natira, yun yung net ionic equation. This showed us kung ano talaga yung nangyari sa equation. Okay, and then for the acid-base reaction, basically that's the reaction between H plus and OH. H plus is the cation of the acid. Bases have an ion OH. They can combine to form water and salt. Okay, pag sinabing salt, yun yung natira na ions sa acid and base. Okay. So basically, this is another double displacement reaction. You just swap the partners and then you form water. Okay? Ayan. And sometimes you can form precipitates. Okay? Pwede mag-form ng precipitate. Pero hindi naman necessary. Okay? So kunwari, in this question here, the second one, tinanong sa inyo yung net ionic equation. You just do the same sa nakaraang problem. Okay? I mean, sa nakaraang precipitation reaction. Kapag liquid, hindi mo rin siya i-split into ions. Kapag solid, hindi mo rin siya i-split into ions. Okay? So, wag mo sila i-split into ions. Okay? So, ito, i-split mo to into ions and then magka-cancel out yung aluminum pati yung nitrate. So, the net ionic equation for acid-base reactions are always H plus OH minus producing H2O. So, ito parate yung net ionic equation in acid-base. Yan parate. Okay?
So, yan. That ends our discussion today. Yan. So, di ko na ubusin yung oras, no? Because I am sleepy. I need to sleep again. Kayo lang klase ko kasi kapag Wednesday, after nyo talaga natutulog uli ako. Okay? So, that ends our discussion and I hope you learned something. I will end the recording. So, I'll ask, no,